So, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly sessions on IBC. And today's episode is all about labor law, continuation of the discussion that we had last week. And we have done a lot of study on the labor law intricacies with IBC. And I believe Anil sir will share a lot more, and we're looking forward to a lot of discussion, a lot of questions answered with respect to this aspect of IBC.
Thank you, Ankit. Namaste to all the participants today. The subject which we continued from the last week, which is the workmen and employees on Crossroad with IBC. What we wanted to include in this sessions relating to workman and employee, and also the regulations and law regarding the workmen, employees, their claims, and the kind of litigation. So while we started one question last week, one question was raised by one of the participants, that the definition of workman and what he probably announced in the meeting itself, that the definition of workman as used by some of his some of his cases, that was something which was not acceptable to us, and we said that this is not that we have known. So we have gone into the detail of definition of workman, although it was covered and there was no gap in our understanding, but then we have also gone into little detailed. So what we have found is that there is first of all, there has to be one threshold. That threshold is of industry or a service provider, and there is what kind of industry or what kind of service providers would be covered, where workmen can actually be employed, or the people employed there can be called as workmen. And then the second threshold that we have to complete is, and what kind of jobs and responsibilities are given to that man. I will share this screen and I will ask Ankit to deliberate on this part regarding the definition of yeah.
So just a little before this, yeah.
So here we are, where we started with the definition of workman, and started with section 336.
Yeah.
Yes, Ankit.
So basically, now we have looked into this section 2S. Now, section 2S, as we understood, has been amended multiple times. But yes, this is the definition, or this is the section which gives the workman definition. And it clearly says that it has to be a person who is employed in an industry. And when it is said industry, then industry also has a definition in the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So it has to belong from that industry. Then, of course, this is pretty expansive: manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical, or supervisory work for hire or reward, whether the terms of employment be express or employed. So there has to be a master-servant relationship with the person who is employed by the company or the CD. And at the other side, it has to be an industry which is recognized under the Industrial Dispute Act, or recognized as industry under the Industrial Dispute Act. Apart from this, then of course we are looking at the last part, which is not very important. It talks about, whether the person is in employment or was in employment, so that doesn't matter. Certain exclusions from workmen: it does not include any person who is subject to the Air Force Act, Army Act, Navy Act. So basically, armed forces people are not workmen. Then police service, or an officer of or other employee of any prison. Then employed mainly in a managerial or administrative capacity. Now this has a wide implication. So wherever somebody can be said to be employed in managerial or administrative capacity, they're out of the workman definition. Then last one is the one where we thought that, yes, we talked about. So this 10,000 rupees in the part D has been inserted on 15 September 2010 by the Industrial Disputes Amendment Act 2010. And the last part says that if somebody is employed in a supervisory capacity and he draws an amount exceeding 10,000 rupees per month, or exercises either by nature of duty attached to the office or by reason of the power vested in him, functions mainly of managerial nature. So these people are out. So see, managerial and administrative capacity is anyways out in C, but we say that if somebody is employed in a supervisory capacity, draws 10,000 rupees, and based on his powers, he is his functions are managerial in nature. He's no longer working on a machine, working himself on something. He's rather managing things. So that also gets excluded in the last part. And this whole definition has been amended quite a few times. So 2S of Industrial Disputes Act has been amended multiple times. West Bengal has another amendment, but not a very important one. 2J, the section 2J talks about industry. So in industry, it talks about what all are industries. Then it says that basically any capital has been invested or for the purpose of carrying on such an activity that would become an industry. Such activities carried on with the motive to make any gain or profit. And then it talks about inclusions, that these are the two inclusions. But what is more important is the exclusions in the industry, which is on the next page. So the exclusions are agricultural operation, hospitals or dispensaries, training, education, scientific research or training institutions, then charitable, social or philanthropic services, khadi or village industries. These are exclusions. These people who are employed in such businesses cannot be workmen as per the Industrial Dispute Act. Then any activity of the government, any domestic service, any profession where the people employed are less than 10, or any cooperative society or a club where the people employed are less than 10. So these people do not uh, qualify to be workmen or be covered under the Industrial Dispute Act as a workman. Now, this Industrial Dispute Act 1947 is part of a process to be repealed by this new act called Industrial Relations Code. And Industrial Relations Code has already been passed by the Parliament, has received the assent of the President, but it has not been notified by the Government of India because the underlying rules are still being negotiated across the country. In this Act of 2020, the concept of workmen has been removed. What has been left is only employees. And there the definition is now talking about a threshold of 18,000 rupees. The definition is almost the same as Industrial Dispute Act, but the amounts have changed. How that will also change in IBC is yet to be seen based on how things shape up with respect to this code.
So thank you, Ankit. So I can even a little bit of consolidation. So I think the first threshold is that we have to cross to see whether in this business would there be any workmen or not. If there would not be any workmen, then all are employees. So what we have to do is, since there is no definition of employees, because employees are contractual relationship. So in case there are workmen, so then first threshold that we have to apply is whether that particular organization is an industry or not. If it is an industry, and maybe it is an industry for providing any service, but first of all, it has to go through the threshold of industry. Like an administrative office, like a chartered accountant or an advocate, that in any case, the first threshold limit has not been crossed. Then thereafter, there are many such inclusions and exclusions, like all this Army, Navy, Air Force, government employees, all those organizations, professional organizations, marketing organizations, they all are excluded from industry. So the first threshold when we complete, and then comes with the second analysis. The second analysis is if a person is actually in a workman role, that means that he is involved in a kind of operations which are related to manufacturing or which are related to providing service at a shop level. And then comes with the role of supervisory role and managerial role. In supervisory or managerial role, if a person is in supervisory or a managerial role, then in case he is drawing a salary of more than 10,000, that person also is excluded from the definition of workman. And yes, there's like the first is the industry threshold. Second is the bifurcation of role, which is the supervisory, managerial, marketing. All these roles are excluded. So then comes is the remuneration. So any remuneration which is more than 10,000, and this is as old amendment as 2010. After that, there has not been any amendment on this amount. So even if a person is in supervisory role and his salary is more than 10,000 rupees, he would not be considered as workman. So this is the definition of workman. So the one participant in the last week meeting, in fact, whatever he was saying, that one of their cases, it has been considered as all are not workmen. So that's not something which is correct. Like now I can even give illustrations. If a person is working in an industry, that means in the first threshold, he is that particular organization is an industry. Secondly, that person is still working on not on a supervisory or managerial role, then he is a worker irrespective of his remuneration. Even if a worker is taking 1 lakh rupees a month, he would still be a worker. The definition of worker is not determined on the basis of salary. However, the supervisor would be considered as a supervisor would be considered as a workman or an employee. That is what is determined by a remuneration limit of 10,000 per month. So I think it should be very importantly clarified who all are workmen and who all are employees, because under this insolvency law, workman has a priority, same priority as is given to the secured creditors in an insolvency process. So therefore, the workmen, everyone would like to be workmen. It is the duty of all the IRP, RP, or even liquidator that they would analyze the workman and employee based on this understanding that we have now developed amongst ourselves. So I think when we talk about workman dues, which is again mentioned in this term, IBC is using this term workman dues. When we see the definition, then we see the definition is provided under section 326 of the Companies Act 2013, and that too in the explanation. So what it says that the workman dues include all wages or salaries, including salary earned by way of commission and a compensation payable to a workman, all accrued holiday remuneration. Holiday remuneration is also workman dues, becoming payable to any workman, or in the case of his death, termination, or his employment before or by the effect of the winding up order. So even if the company goes into liquidation, if there are some holiday remuneration which is due to workmen, that also would be considered as workman dues, even if the company goes into liquidation. All amounts dues in respect of any compensation or liabilities for compensation under the Compensation Act. Now, the Workmen Compensation Act is a separate act which talks about any compensation payable to workmen because of his death or because of some disablement. That is something which is important for the workmen. That is a separate act, Workmen Compensation Act. Then is the all sum dues to any workman from the Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and the Gratuity Fund, or any other fund for the welfare of the workmen maintained by the company. Now, in case the company is not maintaining any Provident Fund, or Pension Fund, or Gratuity Fund, that is something different. But in case the company is maintaining Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and a Gratuity Fund, all that money, whatever is lying in those funds, are considered to be workman dues. However, there is a separately, the Provident Fund is applicable to employees also, Pension Fund is applicable to employees also, Gratuity Fund is also applicable to employees. But what we are talking here is the workman dues definition include this. And when we talk about employees definition also will talk about Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and Gratuity Fund. So this workman dues is important because we are receiving claims under the insolvency law. We receive claims for workman dues and employees dues. Then when we talk about the wages or workman dues, because see, when we see this definition, all wages or salary, including salary earned, so therefore we need to go to the definition of salary, which is provided in section 2, subsection RR of the Industrial Dispute Act. Wages means a remuneration capable of being expressed in terms of money, which would, if the terms of the employment expressed or employed were fulfilled, be able to be payable to workman in respect of his employment or of work done in such employment, and includes such allowance, including dearness allowance, as the workman is for the time being entitled to, the value of any house accommodation or of supply of light, water, medical attendance, or other amenity, or of any service, or of any concessional supply of food or other articles. So traditionally, when we come to the industrial scenario in our country, the wages were being paid partly in a kind of kinds and partly in measurable in terms of money. So whatever is payable in terms of money, along with that, it was also very clear that the company will provide accommodation and free light, water, medical attendance, and also some kind of food grains or some articles which would be provided to workmen, and that also is considered to be wages. So the wages can be partly in terms of money, and partly it can be in terms of some kind of concessional goods or articles, and also some kind of free supply of services. Any traveling concession is also part of the wages. Any traveling concession is also part of the wages, but wages does not include. No, wages does not include. It's very, very important to understand that when we admit claim, so what we have to admit under wages? First of all, we actually have to see whether the person or the organization that we are working for, whether we are IRP or RP, whether that is covered under the definition of industry or not. That is our first step. Then the second step is the role of the workman. Then third step is the remuneration. Now, when we actually decide that yes, these three things are complied with, then we see the kind of workman dues. So this is all what can be included in the workman dues. And then we see the word wages, what it includes. The word wages includes all this. But then we come to know, see, so in case any person gives us a claim of bonus in our claim document, in case there is any claim which comes for bonus or contribution paid or payable by the employer to any pension fund or provident fund, or for the benefit of the workman under any law for the time being in force, and then gratuity on the termination of his services, any commission payable on the promotion of sales. This is basically sale incentive or business promotion. Now, these are some things which are not part of the workman dues, because the workman dues only include wages, and these are excluded from the wages because the bonus is payable under another law, where this is Payment of Bonus Act. Similarly, pension and the provident fund, these are different law. These are payable under different statute. Gratuity is also payable under different statute. Therefore, it is important to understand what is part of workman dues and what is not part of workman dues. So in case I receive claims, I will first of all see whether it's a wages or it's a salary. If it is a wage, then I will actually admit the claim of wages, and I will admit the claim of bonus separately, provident fund separately, pension fund separately, gratuity separately, and commission separately. See, unless I do this, I would not be able to do justice with the claim verification, because these payments, these wages are in fact having different treatments under the IBC. The bonus payment is a different treatment, because in case I consider bonus as workman dues, then it will have priority. However, in case I consider bonus, which is otherwise a kind of amount payable under a law, that is a separate obligation, and then probably section 236 would prevail, and maybe that the bonus is not payable because the priority has been provided only to wages, and salaries to workmen, and the salaries and wages to workmen does not include bonus, provident fund, gratuity, and commission. So when I say that, that also means that there is a separate importance for bonus, provident fund, pension fund, gratuity, and commission, because this may have different treatment under section 53. If any claim has a different treatment under section 53, I need to separately arrive at that figure, like what particular claim falls under what clause of section 53, because this is what is important while I do the claim verification. So in case there is a bonus payment, where there is a claim of the bonus, then it might have a different treatment. It is not fitting into the definition of wages. In case I have a gratuity payable, it might have a different treatment, because this is not something the workman and workman's definition. So this is a separately amount which is payable. So in case all this would be payable, in case the money is available with the company, it would be payable, because these are not part of the wages. So these are not part of the wages as per section 2RR of the Industrial Dispute Act. These are not part of the wages. So Ankit, in case you think that I'm analyzing correctly, that the bonus will have to be calculated separately, gratuity will have to be calculated separately, it cannot be merged with the claim of wages. So there has to be separate columns when we admit a claim for workman. So the workman claim, not all claims of workmen is part of the workman dues, because workman dues, yes.
My thought process is that we need to understand what is, part of section 53. The language there, I believe, is that it simply says 24 months or 12 months. We need to check that language and see in case it is specific to wages or salary for 12 months or 24 months. Because once a person is a workman, then he is eligible to get various emoluments from the company, from the CD. That can be salary, that can be bonus, that can be gratuity, that can be leave encashment, that can be an ESI compensation, a PF compensation. It can be a lot of things that that person is eligible to. But then what does the priority or the waterfall mechanism exactly say? That if it says 24 months salary, then 24 months salary will perhaps not include the bonus, because nobody can say that salary includes bonus or monthly salary includes bonus.
Yes, I believe so. And now I think let me even go to section 53 to just in a moment we will even check what exactly is written in section 53. What exactly is written? Workman's dues. So we have seen workman dues, Ankit. So I think we are very clear that we have seen workman dues, and there is nothing that we have seen something which is not relevant here. So workman dues is the amount which is mentioned here. And in case this is what is the section 53, which is seen on the screen, the following that will rank equally between and amongst the following: workman dues for the period of 24 months preceding the liquidation commencement date is one. And this and then we can see the workman dues. The definition of workman dues is all wages or salary, including salary earned by way of commission and any compensation payable to any workman. So when we see this definition under the Companies Act, and then we go and see the definition under the Industrial Dispute Act. So therefore, I believe this, even the commission is inclusive. Commission is included in the wages. So commission is not required to be separately assessed, because this is also very clearly written. This includes commission, and however, it is nowhere saying that. It is only saying that the provident fund, pension fund, and gratuity fund, whatever money is available, that would be considered as workman dues.
So my understanding tells me that it is supposed to be all the dues that have been accrued to a person during the last 24 months. So in case a bonus has also bonus, if bonus has accrued to an employee, then even that perhaps can be should be included in this definition, and that would also be included in the claim.
Bonus is also not excluded, because see, the workman dues definition is as per Companies Act, and what we are looking at is as per Industrial Dispute Act. So Industrial Dispute Act says that the commission is not part of the wages, whereas the Companies Act says that the commission is part of the wages. It is only now the only question left is for bonus.
So different acts work in different manners. In case you look at Industrial Disputes Act, Industrial Disputes Act talks about that if there is a dispute and the factory is closed, the industry is closed, what is the kind of compensation that will be payable to the employees. Then it talks about shutdown, then it talks about layoffs and all that. So it is basically addressing and creating a authority which can handle disputes. But then it doesn't function alone. That's also evident from the Companies Act definition of wages. So I believe the wholesome and the complete payable balance would make better sense. But yes, of course, if bonus has not accrued, then that cannot be perhaps demanded. Similarly, in case gratuity is not due, perhaps that can also not be demanded, because uh, that would then not become part of the dues or
I
dues as an
have
employee.
I have various things in mind regarding gratuity, so we'll just park it for the time being. As of now, we only could find that the bonus may not be part of the workman dues. Otherwise, everything is part of the workman dues, including commission payable on promotion of sales or business. Because see, although it is said in this, whereas the definition under the Companies Act, Section 326, says in salary, including the salary earned by way of commission and also compensation payable to any workman. So the compensation that it talks about is the retrenchment compensation, because that is under the Industrial Dispute Act, or the compensation which is otherwise the Workman Compensation Act is a separate act which is regarding the disability or kind of death of a worker. So I think we move on to say
So further,
yes.
one thing to add. So bonus is payable to people who are one earning less than 21,000 or the minimum wages, whichever is more, and then it is also payable only for 1 month for wherever the company is in losses. So it can vary between 8.33% to 20%. So 8.33% actually is 1 by 12. That is 1 month salary. So that is the kind of payable amount there.
So now coming to the definition of employee, because it is not defined in the code, so we can actually go to the general definition of the employees, which is being referred to as a person who is hired by employee to perform a particular job of the employer. The employee is entitled to uh, a specific wage or salary and performs the work under the control or regulation of the employer. So this is what is the definition. Coming to the definition of gratuity, it is payable under the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, Section 4 of the Act, which is the Payment of Gratuity Act, says it will be payable to an employee on termination of his employment after he has rendered continuous service for not less than 5 years on his superannuation or on retirement or resignation or death or disablement due to accident or disease. So 5 years limitation is there. However, there is a proviso, and that proviso says that this 5-year continuous service completion is not necessary where the termination of any employee is due to death or disablement. So 5 years or these two conditions, death or disablement, whichever is less, that is where the gratuity payment obligation will start. The payment of gratuity will be accrued. However, most of there are LIC policies or there are some other arrangements that the employer can make for assuring that whenever need be, the workers will get their gratuity from that fund. So some companies are managing the fund where this gratuity contribution is made, and then out of that fund, the gratuity contingencies are met. However, it is not mandatory under any law that all the employers will have that kind of policy, maybe from life insurance corporation or from other. But yes, in case there are any fund managed by the company that is outside the liquidation estate, in case there is a payment which is already made to the for the gratuity insurance, that is also excluded and nobody can bring it back as the asset of the company. So however, whatever gratuity is payable, and there is a provision made in the financial statement, but there is no fund created for the gratuity, and there is no insurance which has been taken by the employer. So under those circumstances, what happened to the claim of gratuity? My understanding is that the claim of gratuity is something which is most controversial. Why I'm saying so, that during CIRP, if a worker is continuing and the worker is also submitting a claim of the gratuity. Now, the claim of the gratuity, in case he is submitting as on the date of commencement of CIRP, that means that he's also working and he's also submitted his claim. That is because the claim of gratuity is completely dynamic. So in case he submits the claim, that means he is submitting the claim only up to the date of commencement of CIRP. And then in case the RP admits that claim, that information will go to the RA. So in case the employee is not submitting the claim of gratuity, then the resolution applicant will come and resolution applicant will submit a resolution plan. The RP also would not have that information available readily. So in some cases, the successful resolution applicant might even say that I have taken over all the workmen without any liability attached to them. So therefore, what I believe, the gratuity payment should also be asked from the employees and workmen as a part of the claim. And in case that particular claim should have been provided in the information memorandum, the successful resolution applicant need to take the decision whether he is continuing whether he is taking over the liability of gratuity or not. That is something which is a kind of so far no solution that I could find. How do I handle gratuity during CIRP? And what happens to the gratuity when the liquidation order is passed? When the liquidation order is passed, all the employees are supposed to be discharged, and whether their claim would be considered as at the beginning of the liquidation or at the end of the CIRP. So the gratuity claim, would that become part of the CIRP because it was not payable on day-to-day basis, it was payable only on the termination. So the termination has happened on the commencement of liquidation, and then if it is in case it has to be provided, then would it be a CIRP cost or a liquidation cost? So these are the questions. Question number one, which needs a resolution from the regulations. That one, this gratuity, if it is accruing on day-to-day basis, or if it accrues, or it becomes payable on termination or retirement of the employee. So in case it is due only on a particular date, that means the date of the liquidation order. So would it be CIRP cost or would it be liquidation cost? So these are some of the questions regarding gratuity. However, I would advise all the employees to file claim for their gratuity, and I would also advise the IRP or RP that they should admit the claim of the gratuity, so that information is provided to the successful resolution applicant. However, the figure of gratuity should always be kept separate from the workman dues, because its treatment can be different. So that's what I'm saying. If the treatment can be different, then we need to have a separate column for gratuity, provident fund, pension fund. So that's what I'm trying to say, so that the different kind of treatment can be made later on. Yes, Ankit. So when we talk about this provident fund, so there are two parts of the provident fund. One is the amount employees contribution, and the other is employers contribution. When we talk about employees contribution, which is deducted from the salary of the employee while making payment of salary, that is the money which is not owned by the corporate debtor. That is the money which is owned by the company, owned by the employee, and that money was already kind of paid to them. And out of the payment which is supposed to be made to employee, there is an obligation on the employer to deduct the employee's share, then add employer share and deposit to Provident Fund Commissioner. So when we say this, any deduction which has been done from the salary which is disbursed, that is a kind of outside the liquidation estate, and it is payable 100%, because that is something which is held by the company in trust. Company is only acting as trustee for that amount. However, employer's contribution will become part of the workman dues or salaries payable. So this is what is my understanding regarding provident fund. And the other thing which I want to say, that if the salary is not disbursed, the provident fund is not deducted by the employer as employee's contribution, then in that case the payment of provident fund is not due. The payment of provident fund is due only on payment of salary or wages. And two parts: employees contribution is not the asset of the company. It is the company is only keeping that money by way of a trust. So in case of liquidation, the employees contribution will be paid 100% because that money is payable. That money is kept with the company as a trustee. Employer contribution definitely can be kept separate, and that will become part of the workman dues. So this is what is my understanding. Anything, Ankit, that you would like to add on provident fund? And because the provident fund, I mean, of course, the litigation, a lot of litigations are there that we will handle later, or anything that you want to add on gratuity and provident fund.
So I want to add 2-3 things. One, in cases where provident fund is not, or provident fund or gratuity or leave encashment is not provided for through a third party, it remains a liability within the corporate debtor. So in those cases, in case we talk about 12 months and 24 months of salaries payable, most likely that 12 months or 24 months cannot perhaps include the amounts payable with respect to the past 30 years of somebody's employment, or it will. So that's the question at hand, that in case we say that gratuity is payable for 15 days of the year for 30 years of the employment of a person, and that gratuity was payable on the retirement, that retirement or the retirement or death has not happened, and say the company goes into liquidation after CIRP. So in that case, that gratuity, I believe, will, for the past years, will not be payable. Will that be the case? Will that be the scenario? If it is not, it is to be considered, then the next question is that, will it be considered for in the past 24 months or 12 months, because it has just happened, that event that made this payable? So
This is what is a very big question in my mind. Somebody who is working for 30 years in a company and the company goes into liquidation, so he files his claim of the gratuity, and he's been told that we can only admit a claim of only 24 months, and your gratuity was accruing on year-to-year basis. So if you're out of 30 years, we can only admit for 2 years, and that also would be payable pari passu along with the secured creditor. That's not what probably any law would have meant. Because if there is a gratuity and the employer has not taken any, that the employer has not made any provision for the payment of gratuity, no insurance policy has been taken, no gratuity fund has been managed by the employer, that in that case that the employer is non-compliant. And when we say gratuity insurance is not mandatory, and gratuity fund is also not mandatory. I see like very small number of employers in India, they are actually taking this kind of precautions like insurance or maintaining fund, but mostly they are not maintaining the fund. So therefore, when the IRP joins or liquidator comes, in case they don't find any money in the gratuity fund, that doesn't mean that the 35-year-old dues of a particular person is become not payable. So nobody can say that gratuity accrues year on year and it is only admittable for 2 years, and rest of your gratuity is not payable. That is something very harsh. And also legally, when we see legally, the gratuity doesn't become payable on every day. It becomes payable only on termination, or only on retirement, or only on what. So there has to be a, like kind of in case the engagement has to break, then only the gratuity is payable. So in case engagement is continuing and the liquidation comes, that doesn't mean that the entire gratuity is eaten away. the gratuity should not be eaten away. It only requires the clarification that the gratuity is a kind of either it's a liquidation cost or it is a CIRP cost in case this decision has been taken by the committee during CIRP to terminate all the employees. So this is what I feel about the gratuity. So Ankit, pension, the bonus is a kind of statutory liability. Payment of Bonus Act imposes a legal responsibility upon employer of every establishment which employs 20 or more workmen and provides for a minimum bonus of 8.33% wages, and maximum bonus is 20% of the salary during the.
So in loss-making enterprise, 20% may not happen anytime because there's a formula through which this percentage is calculated based on the profit of the company. And with respect to the salaries, everyone who is about 21,000 per month salary is anyways excluded from this act. So therefore, very few employees will remain who are eligible for the statutory bonus.
So even if there is a person who actually is taking a salary of say 1 lakh of rupees, and even on 1 lakh of rupees, 8.33% is not to be calculated. So it is to be calculated some base salary. So in case we want to pay bonus, the minimum bonus which is payable is I think 3,500 rupees, that kind of. So there is a catch another. How much bonus? For the purpose of bonus, there is a amount of salary which is to be considered and not the entire salary. So that amount of salary I think we have not captured. So we will actually try to, yes, we will have to go through that amount of what is the amount which is payable, minimum amount of bonus which is payable to all, which is considered as 8.33%. So that is, to my understanding, that is 3,500 per employee. Going to the pension, the employees pension scheme is a social security scheme provided by the Employee Provident Fund organization. The scheme makes provision for employees working in the organization sector for a pension after their retirement at the age of 58. The benefit of the scheme can be availed only if the employee has provided a service for at least 10 years. This does not have to be a continuous service. The pension, again, this is one of the claims which we receive, and we need to admit this claim separately. And every company has a different policy of pension, and every company can even introduce such pension schemes. But according to our understanding, it is not mandatory that every company should have a pension scheme, which is Employees Provident Fund organization. I think it is still discretionary to employers. Now coming back to see, since we have now explained the relevant labor laws, what is a workman due, what is the definition of industry, what is the definition of wages, salary, and all these acts, then we should see the coming back to the claims. And this is where we finally see that during CIRP, the workman and employee, they have to file their claim in Form D along with the proof of claims by the workman or employee. And so they actually have additional facility, because in case you see the CIRP, everyone is saying that everyone is supposed to file their claims by electronically, like email. So however, in the case of employees, it is not mandatory, but they can file even their claim in person, or they can file even by post. But now, of course, with the judgments, various judgments, we are undergoing a scenario where even if the workers have not filed claims, if the IRP get the information, and that information can be captured as amount payable to workmen, maybe there are claims or not. Individual employee-wise claims are available to IRP or not. But in case there is some figure which is appearing in the books of account, that is what should be taken by IRP or RP. Form D can also be filed as workman claim, as one claim is substituted by authorized representative for numerous workmen or employees records available in an information utility, if any. Now, during liquidation, the same workmen or employees, they will file their claim in Form E of Schedule 2, along with the proof of claims of the workman or employee. Here also, there is an assumption that they can file their claims in person also, whereas in the case of other claimants, this in-person filing of the claimant mode is not available. So, Form E is in case of one claim is substituted by authorized representative for numerous workmen or employees records available. So that means the form can be filed by individual workmen or it can be filed by an authorized representative. And mostly in most of the cases, even some of the employees of the corporate debtor, they help workmen or employees to file their claims. Coming to Regulation 19(4), the liquidator may admit the claims of a workman or an employee on the basis of books of accounts of the corporate debtor if such workman or employee has not made a claim. This is what I was referring to. But there are some cases also, there are some judgments also, which says that if the claims are not filed, the books of accounts are available, the RP is duty bound to see the books of account and try to find those obligations, liabilities of the company, fill this up in the information memorandum. That is something which is, and also try to contact all these employees or workmen so that the claims are filed. Yes, Ankit. We see the claims of workmen and employees to include, they have to file their claim of wages, salaries, contribution towards PF deducted from the salary but not deposited by the employer. I said that this is something which is very important, deducted from the employee but not deposited. Then balance outstanding in Provident Fund, Pension Fund, Gratuity Fund at the time of commencement of CIRP or liquidation, along with the interests dues in respect of employer's contribution for PF, pension, in respect of unpaid salaries. These are some of the items that we have to collate and verify. So this is where we need to get the separate details of salary and wages, separate details of employees' contribution for Provident Fund and employers' contribution for Provident Fund, and balance outstanding in Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and Gratuity Fund. That also is information is required to be given by the IRP to the information memorandum to RAs. So going to the next slides, the claims are to be submitted with proofs by the employees and workmen. So these documents has to be proved in such a manner that they provide some evidence that they have these many disputes, like contract of employment, like evidence of notice demanding payment of unpaid amount, or any other documentary or other proof that may have not been made. Any kind of court or a tribunal order that has adjudicated upon the non-payment of dues, other relevant documents which adequately establish the debt, and RP liquidator may admit claims on the basis of the books of account. This is what is said.
In this, on this slide, like a practical question that everyone would have is that in many cases attendance records are not available. It is not clear that for how long have the employees or workmen worked in the organization, especially in cases where the organization has been shut for a while. So how does that work? Because then it becomes an issue that how do you compensate employees and how do you differentiate between those employees who have not been working for the company at all?
So the understanding that we have developed is the records and the records of the company, returns filed to Provident Fund Department, ESI Department, and wherever some returns are supposed to be filed, that is what we try to rely upon. And also in all circumstances, the workmen or employees information is normally given by the corporate debtor. So we can see books of account, we can see the returns filed for all Provident Fund, ESI, and also the when we call about ESI, so there are some cards which are issued to employees which are now electronic card. So these are the verification that we can do, and we can also ask the employees that how the dues has been calculated, because if there is a tendency that the employees or workmen, they file a very high amount of claims as compared to their entitlement. So this is also causing some issues, because there are huge number of employees or workmen in some cases, and the claim verification becomes difficult. Going forward, Ankit, submission of proof of claims by government authorities, and this is like statutory authorities as treated as operational creditor during CIRP. The government authorities like EPFO, Employees Provident Fund Organization, they also submit their claims under Form B of the schedule. In liquidation process, the government authorities like EPF may submit their claims under Form C of the scheduled of the schedule pursuant to Regulation 17 of the liquidation process. So these are the claims, these are filed, and the as I said, the government authorities may submit their claims before the RP liquidator in case of in case the dues of the employees' contribution for Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and for paid salaries are not deposited with EPF, Exemplary PF Trust, and Pension Fund Trust. Employers' contribution also, and interest payable to EPFO on account of delay in remitting some penalty charges levied by EPFO. These are the details that we need. These are the details that we need from the employees, like what is their contribution which has been deducted by the employer and has not deposited, what is the employer's contribution, what is the interest which is being charged by the EPFO, and what are the penalties which are being charged by EPFO. Why we are saying that we need separate claim verification format for verification of employees and workmen, and that format must also capture the information about Provident Fund, Pension Fund, employer contribution. So what is the balance amount that is presently due from the company? Now, this was the adjudication that has been done in this case, Provident Fund case, because in fact, the kind of adjudication that we have seen in these cases. So what we have covered so far, Ankit, we have covered what is the workman, what is an employee, what is the definition of wages and salaries, what is the definition of industry. So the first threshold is that we should understand whether a person is a workman or an employee. That's the first threshold. Then we have a second threshold is that what is the role of this employee into the organization. Third threshold is the remuneration. All taken together, all the three things taken together will finalize whether a person is a workman or an employee. But once we do this, then we also have to admit their claim, and we have to admit their claim. For some items, it has to be seen separately. For example, the Provident Fund that we are saying, there are two parts of the Provident Fund. Employees' contribution has to be paid because that's a deduction made from his salary. It was supposed to be, that money was supposed to be kept under trust it was not owned by the company. They dispersed 10,000 rupees as a wages, and out of that 1,000 came back to them as employees' contribution. So that is something which is called money lying with the company on trust. So this then we have the bonus, in case we can see that the bonus is also separately claimed, but then the bonus is not part of the wages. The gratuity, as we have already explained, that gratuity, to my understanding, doesn't become accrued on daily basis. It only gets accrued on an event. So this is something that we can then we saw the claim verification from the workman. It is the duty of the liquidator to as per the books of account, the liquidator should admit the claims. So, Ankit, we have a pledge that we will not go beyond 1 hour, and therefore now we are now we our deliberations will be on the case laws, judicial pronouncements on this. So, when we go to the judicial pronouncements, then again we will recall about these definitions and about these priorities under Section 53. So we have finished 1 hour and we would not like to continue. However, there will be part 3 for this issue. And in this part 3, we would only be deliberating about various case laws, judicial pronouncements on the workmen and employees dues during liquidation or during CIRP. This is what all for today. Ankit, is all up to you. Wow.
Sounds good. So we will take this forward next Sunday, and we will look at all the judicial pronouncements which have been which we have from NCLT and NCLAT and the higher court so far. And looking forward to see you next week for further discussion on this matter.
Thank you, participants, and your numbers encourages us, and thank you very much for participating in numbers. It, I think, it motivates us to keep working hard on this. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.